They say love can heal every wound. But what happens when the one you trusted the most becomes the reason for your darkest nightmares? Tonight, we bring you 9 terrifying true stories of ex-lovers where passion twisted into betrayal and affection turned into pure horror. These are not just tales. They are chilling reminders that sometimes the person closest to your heart can become the one who haunts you forever. Welcome to Bleeding Walls, the channel where real stories bleed fear into every corner. Don't forget to subscribe, because what you hear tonight might just follow you into your dreams. Story 1. The Promise That Turned to Fear. I never imagined that the person I once called the love of my life would one day become the source of my deepest terror. Her name was Alina, and for 3 years she was everything to me. My best friend, my secret keeper, my world. We met during my final year at university. She was brilliant, charming, and carried an aura that drew people in effortlessly. But beneath her soft laughter and warm touch, there was a storm waiting to unravel, a storm I was too blind to see. Our love began in a rush of late-night conversations and long walks under dim streetlights. She would often say things like, "No matter what happens, I'll never let you go." At first, I thought it was sweet, maybe even romantic. I didn't realize how literal she meant those words. Things were perfect in the beginning. We traveled together, dreamed together, and planned a future that seemed so certain. But as the months passed, I started to notice small cracks in her behavior. If I missed her calls, she would send dozens of messages, growing more frantic with each passing minute. If I spoke with a female classmate, she would glare, her jaw tightening until her teeth ground together. And if I tried to calm her down, she would cry, then beg, then whisper promises of never leaving me. It was suffocating, but I ignored the signs. I told myself it was passion, that maybe she just loved me too much. I couldn't have been more wrong. One night after graduation, we had an argument that changed everything. I had received a job offer in another city, and I wanted to accept it. It was a huge opportunity for me, but when I told Alina, she froze. Her eyes darkened and she whispered, "If you go, you'll never come back to me. I won't let that happen." I laughed it off, thinking she was being dramatic. But later that night I woke to find her standing beside my bed, staring down at me with a blank expression. Her hand held a pair of scissors, and her lips curled into the faintest smile. When I jolted upright, she whispered, "I was just trimming a loose thread from your shirt. Don't worry, I'd never hurt you." I wanted to believe her, but the unease in my chest never left. Over the next few weeks, her obsession spiraled. She began showing up unannounced wherever I went, at my office, at my friend's house, even outside my parents' home. When I confronted her, she would smile sweetly and say, "You promised we'd never be apart." It didn't matter how much I explained that I needed space. She refused to hear it. Finally, I decided to end things. I told her gently, over coffee at a quiet cafe, that we weren't right for each other anymore. For a moment, she sat perfectly still, her eyes locked on mine, as if memorizing my face. Then she leaned forward and whispered, "If you leave me, I'll make sure you regret it. Not just today, not tomorrow, but for the rest of your life." I walked out that day, my heart pounding. I thought the nightmare would end there. But it was only the beginning. A week later, strange things started happening. My phone would ring in the middle of the night, and when I answered, there would only be the sound of breathing on the other end. Once I came home to find my apartment door unlocked, even though I was certain I had locked it. Nothing was missing, but my clothes had been rearranged in the closet. Another time I found a note on my pillow that read, "Still mine." I knew it was her. I changed my number, moved to a new apartment, and even alerted the building's security. But somehow she always found me. My friends told me to go to the police, but every time I thought about it, I remembered her soft smile, her sweet voice, and the person she used to be. I kept convincing myself it would stop, that she'd eventually move on. I was wrong again. One night, as I was returning home late from work, I noticed something unusual. My front door was slightly ajar. Fear surged through me, but I forced myself inside. The lights wouldn't turn on. My heart raced as I fumbled through the dark, and that's when I heard it. The sound of soft humming, a melody I knew all too well. It was the same tune Alina used to hum when she cooked dinner for us. "Alina," I whispered, my voice trembling. From the shadows, she stepped forward, her face half hidden in the dim glow of the street lamp outside the window. She was holding a framed photograph of the two of us from years ago. Her fingers traced my face in the picture as she whispered, "We were so happy. Why did you ruin it?" I stumbled back, reaching for my phone, but she lunged toward me, grabbing my wrist with a grip far stronger than I remembered. "You promised me forever," she hissed. "Forever doesn't end." I managed to shove her away and ran out the door, calling for help. By the time the police arrived, she was gone. They searched the apartment, but all they found was the photo frame, cracked on the floor, and a single note on the table that read, "You can't run from love." I filed a restraining order against her after that, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't stop her. Days turned into weeks, and though she disappeared from sight, the fear never left me. I would catch glimpses of someone watching me from across the street, or hear footsteps behind me in the dead of night, only to find no one there. Months passed. I tried to rebuild my life, tried to convince myself she had finally moved on. Then one evening, as I was about to fall asleep, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a picture of me, standing at my bedroom window, taken just moments before. The caption read, "Forever doesn't end." That was the last time I ever heard from her directly. I don't know where she is now, but sometimes I wake in the night with the feeling that someone is standing over me, watching. My friends tell me it's paranoia, that I should move forward with my life. But I know better. Because once I truly loved her, and once she loved me. But love turned into obsession, and obsession never really dies. Even today, whenever I close my eyes, I can still hear her humming. And deep down, I know Alina never left. She's just waiting for the right moment to come back. Story 2. The Apartment of Broken Memories. When I ended things with Daniel, I thought the hardest part was over. For 2 years, he had been my world, the man who made me believe in love after a string of heartbreaks. But behind his charming smile and gentle words, there was a darkness I didn't fully understand until it was too late. We met at a bookstore of all places. He was browsing the same shelf of horror novels I loved, and we struck up a conversation that turned into coffee, which turned into late-night calls, which eventually turned into love. At least, I thought it was love. He would surprise me with flowers, write me little notes, and tell me how he couldn't imagine life without me. But as our relationship deepened, so did his obsession. Daniel never liked me being around other people. He didn't say it outright at first, but I could feel his unease whenever I mentioned a friend or co-worker. Slowly I began isolating myself without realizing it. I stopped going to gatherings, stopped answering texts, because it was easier than dealing with his constant suspicions. But then came the lies. I caught him once, scrolling through my phone while I was asleep. Another time he showed up uninvited at my office, just to check in. And worst of all, he once admitted that he had followed me on my commute home, just to make sure I was being faithful. I should have left then. I should have seen the signs. But love makes fools of us all, doesn't it? It wasn't until I discovered the notebook that I realized how deep his obsession truly ran. One evening, while he was in the shower, I opened his bedside drawer to look for a pen. That's when I found it, a thick, leather-bound journal filled with pages of my name, scribbled over and over again. My photos glued to the paper, with notes written underneath, where I had been that day, what I wore, even what I said in casual conversations. When I confronted him, he laughed. "It's not weird," he insisted. "It's just how much I love you. I never want to forget anything about you." But something in his eyes chilled me. That wasn't love. That was possession. So I left. I packed my bags while he was at work, moved into a new apartment across town, and changed my number. For weeks, I didn't hear from him. Relief washed over me. I thought maybe he had accepted it. Maybe he had finally let go. But I was wrong. One night I came home to find my apartment door slightly open. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, only to discover nothing out of place, except for one detail. On the kitchen counter sat a small vase of lilies, my favorite flowers. I hadn't bought them. I froze. My hands shook as I locked every door and window, checking every corner. The apartment was empty. Still, the scent of lilies filled the air, cloying and heavy. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that maybe I had bought them and forgotten. But then, a week later, I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of someone breathing in the dark. I turned on the lamp. Nothing. But when I checked my phone, there was a new message from an unknown number. It read, "Sweet dreams, my love. I miss watching you sleep." I reported it to the police, but with no concrete evidence, all they could do was make a note. I changed my locks, even installed cameras in the apartment. For a while I felt safer, until the night I watched the footage. It was a Tuesday. I had come home late, exhausted from work. After dinner I fell asleep on the couch. The next morning I checked the camera feed just to be sure everything was normal. What I saw made my blood run cold. At 2:17 a.m. the front door creaked open. Daniel stepped inside. He didn't rush, didn't fumble. He moved with quiet confidence as if he'd done it many times before. He walked straight to the couch, stood over me for nearly 15 minutes, just watching. Then slowly, he bent down and kissed my forehead before leaving. I dropped my phone, my body trembling. He had been here, in my home, watching me while I slept. I called the police immediately, showed them the footage. They promised to increase patrols in my neighborhood, but there was no sign of forced entry. Somehow he still had a key. I changed the locks again, even the deadbolt. For a few nights, nothing happened. I began to hope maybe the police presence had scared him off. But then came the whispers. At first I thought it was just the wind or neighbors in the hall. But late at night, lying in bed, I would hear it. Soft, raspy whispers coming from the corner of my room. Words I couldn't quite make out, except for one I heard clearly. Mine. I tried to stay with friends, but even then the calls followed me. Unknown numbers, voicemails filled with silence and faint breathing. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I came home to find my apartment filled with candles, hundreds of them flickering in every corner. In the center of the living room was a framed photo of Daniel and me, surrounded by wilted lilies. On the wall, written in red marker, were the words, "Forever bound, no escape." I screamed, ran outside, and called the police again. They searched the place, but like before, there was no trace of him, no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. But I know better. Even now, months later, after moving across the country and changing everything about my life, I still feel him near. Sometimes I'll catch a glimpse of someone familiar in a crowd. Other times I'll wake in the middle of the night with the faint smell of lilies filling the air. And sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I can almost hear it, the sound of his voice, whispering from the shadows. Story 3. The Ring That Wouldn't Let Go. When Adrian proposed to me, I thought it was the happiest day of my life. He knelt in the middle of the park, under the falling autumn leaves, his hands trembling as he slipped a silver ring onto my finger. "Forever," he whispered. And at the time, I believed him. But forever wasn't love. Forever was obsession. Adrian was the kind of man who charmed everyone in the beginning. He was funny, attentive, and always seemed to know exactly what to say to make me feel special. We dated for almost 2 years before he asked me to marry him. I said yes without hesitation. I was blind, lost in the idea of a future together. The first cracks appeared after the engagement. He wanted constant updates about where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. If I didn't respond to his messages immediately, he would flood my phone with calls. Sometimes he would show up unannounced, claiming he just wanted to surprise me. I brushed it off, telling myself he was just excited about our wedding. But deep inside, unease began to grow. The ring itself was strange, a thick band of silver engraved with symbols I didn't recognize. I asked him once where he got it, and he just smiled. "It's special," he said. "It means you're bound to me, in this life and the next." I laughed then, thinking it was romantic. Now I wish I had listened to the warning in his words. 3 months before the wedding, I realized I couldn't do it. The constant surveillance, the suffocating control, it wasn't love anymore. It was fear. I sat him down one evening and told him the truth. I didn't want to marry him. I needed space. At first he was quiet, too quiet. Then, without a word, he walked over to me, grabbed my hand, and pointed at the ring. "You can't leave," he whispered. "This isn't just a promise. It's a bond." I pulled my hand away, shaken, and ran out of the apartment. That night I tried to take off the ring. But no matter how hard I tugged, twisted, or even tried to pry it off with soap and oil, it wouldn't budge. My finger grew red and swollen from the effort. It was as though the ring had fused to my skin. I went to a jeweler the next day, desperate to have it cut off. But when the man placed the saw against the band, the blade snapped. His face went pale. "I've never seen metal like this," he murmured. "It's unnatural." I left the shop, trembling. After that, things escalated quickly. I started receiving letters in my mailbox, written in Adrian's handwriting. Pages filled with strange symbols, the same ones engraved on the ring. At the bottom of each letter, he had written the same phrase, "You are mine always." I tried blocking him on everything, phone, email, social media, but the letters kept coming, sometimes slipped under my door, sometimes left on my car windshield, always signed with that phrase. And then came the dreams. I would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, hearing his voice whispering my name. Sometimes I would see him in the corner of my bedroom, standing perfectly still, his eyes locked on mine. But when I turned on the light, the room was empty. The worst dream came a week later. In it, Adrian stood at the foot of my bed, holding my hand. The ring glowed faintly in the dark, burning against my skin. "You can't escape me," he whispered. "Even death won't break us." I woke screaming, clutching my hand. The skin around the ring was blistered, as though it had been seared by fire. I finally went to the police, but they couldn't do much without proof of immediate danger. They told me to stay with friends, to be cautious. I felt helpless, trapped. One night my friend Claire insisted I stay at her place. We stayed up late, trying to distract me with movies and wine. For a while I almost felt normal again. But when I went to bed, I woke at 3 a.m. to find the ring glowing faintly in the darkness. Claire stirred beside me, frowning. "What's that light?" she asked. Before I could answer, the bedroom door creaked open. Adrian stood in the doorway. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, but his smile was wide and unsettling. "You thought you could hide from me," he whispered. "But the ring always brings me back." Claire screamed, fumbling for her phone. I leapt out of bed, heart pounding. But when we turned on the light, he was gone. The door was shut. We searched the entire apartment, but there was no sign of him. Still, the scent of his cologne lingered in the air. After that night, Claire begged me to see a priest. I wasn't religious, but I was desperate. The priest examined the ring, his brow furrowing. "This is not just a symbol of love," he said quietly. "It's a binding, a curse." He tried blessing it, sprinkling it with holy water. For a moment the ring grew ice-cold, and I thought it might loosen. But then it tightened, biting into my skin till blood seeped around the band. The priest recoiled, pale with fear. "I can't break it," he whispered. "Only the one who gave it to you can." But Adrian had vanished, or so I thought. A month later I moved to another city, trying to start fresh. I got a new job, a new apartment, tried to live as though none of it had ever happened. But the ring still clung to my finger, an ever-present reminder. One night as I walked home from work, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there he was, Adrian. His clothes were ragged, his skin pale, but his eyes burned with a feverish light. "You're mine," he whispered, "forever." Before I could scream, he reached for my hand, pressing the ring tighter against my skin. I felt a searing pain, as though fire raced through my veins. And then he was gone, vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of his voice. I collapsed on the pavement, clutching my hand. The ring glowed faintly before returning to its dull silver sheen. But the burn remained, etched into my skin like a brand. That was 3 years ago. I haven't seen Adrian since, but I know he's still out there. Sometimes I wake to find the ring glowing faintly again. Sometimes I hear his voice in the dark. And sometimes I dream of him standing over me, smiling that same unsettling smile, whispering the same words. "Forever doesn't end." I've tried everything, doctors, priests, jewelers, but the ring won't come off, and every day I feel it growing tighter, as if it's waiting for something. Maybe one day it will stop my blood from flowing. Maybe one day it will consume me completely. But one thing is certain. Adrian was right. The ring won't let go, and neither will he. Story 4. Her voice in the walls. I never believed that love could leave scars that reach beyond the grave. Until I met Maya. She was my first real relationship, the kind of love that swallows you whole. We met at a friend's birthday party, and she was unlike anyone I had ever known. Intense, magnetic, with eyes that seemed to see right through me. Within weeks, we were inseparable. She told me she had always dreamed of a love so deep, it would never die. A bond that would outlast time itself. I laughed back then, charmed by her passion. But passion and obsession are not the same thing. I didn't realize that until too late. From the beginning, Maya had a way of controlling every part of my life without making it obvious. She always wanted to know where I was, what I was doing, who I was speaking with. At first I thought it was sweet. She cared so much. But it didn't take long before it felt like I was being monitored every second of the day. Still, I stayed. I loved her, or at least I thought I did, until the fights started. Maya hated the idea of me being independent. When I told her I needed space, she cried and screamed that I was abandoning her. Once, when I tried to leave her apartment after an argument, she blocked the door and whispered, "If you walk out, I'll make sure you never forget me." I thought it was just drama, empty words. I was wrong. The night it all ended is burned into my memory. We had another fight, this one worse than all the others. I told her I couldn't do it anymore, that I was done. She slapped me, tears running down her face, and screamed, "You can't leave me. You belong to me." I left anyway. I thought I was free. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Maya had been found dead in her apartment. Pills, alcohol, it looked like suicide. The guilt tore through me like a blade. I kept wondering if it was my fault, if leaving her had pushed her over the edge. At her funeral, I couldn't stop crying. Her mother glared at me the entire time, as though she knew I was the reason her daughter was gone. As they lowered her coffin into the ground, I whispered an apology into the cold air, hoping somehow Maya could hear me. But that was only the beginning. The first night back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. The silence felt heavy, suffocating. Around 2 a.m. I heard it, a faint sound like whispering. I sat up, straining my ears. The whispers grew clearer, coming from the walls themselves. And then I heard it, Maya's voice. "Why did you leave me?" I froze. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't possible. She was gone, dead, buried. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks, fueled by grief. But the whispers didn't stop. Night after night I heard her voice through the walls, calling my name, begging me to come back to her. Sometimes the whispers turned to screams, her voice filled with rage. "You promised me forever!" I tried everything, music, sleeping pills, even moving my bed to another room. Nothing worked. The voice followed me everywhere in the apartment. One night I woke to find the words, "Never leave me," scratched into the wall above my bed. My heart pounded as I ran my fingers over the fresh grooves in the plaster. I lived alone. No one else had keys. And then the dreams began. In them, Maya stood at the foot of my bed, her face pale, her eyes hollow. She whispered my name over and over, her voice echoing in the room. When I tried to run, she would scream, her voice shaking the walls. "You belong to me!" I woke from those dreams, drenched in sweat. the sound of her voice still ringing in my ears. It wasn't long before my friends noticed something was wrong. They said I looked pale, exhausted, that I jumped at every sound. I told them bits and pieces, but never the full truth. Who would believe me? That my dead ex-girlfriend was whispering through my walls. One night, desperate for rest, I shouted into the darkness, "What do you want from me?" For the first time, the voice answered clearly, "Forever." The next morning, I found a ring on my nightstand, a silver band I had never seen before. My hands trembled as I picked it up, recognizing the inscription inside, M+D, always. It was Maya's handwriting. From then on, the hauntings grew violent. Lights flickered, doors slammed shut, objects moved on their own. Once, as I was shaving, the mirror cracked, a jagged line splitting my reflection right down the middle. In the silence that followed, I heard her voice, "If I can't have you in life, I'll have you in death." I moved out of the apartment, thinking it would end there. But wherever I went, she followed. In hotel rooms, I heard her whispers. At my parents' house, I woke to find the same scratched words on the wall, "Never leave me." It's been a year now, and the haunting hasn't stopped. I've changed cities, changed numbers, even changed jobs. But nothing matters. Maya is still with me. Sometimes I hear her laugh, soft and chilling, echoing in empty rooms. Sometimes I feel her hand brush against mine in the dark. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear her voice in the walls, whispering the same words over and over. Forever doesn't end. I don't know how much longer I can live like this. Maybe one day I'll give in. Maybe that's what she wants, that I join her, so we can finally be together again. But until that day comes, I know one thing for certain. Maya didn't just leave a memory behind. She left herself, and she isn't going anywhere. Story 5. The Diary of Shadows. I never should have opened the diary. When my relationship with Serena ended, I thought that was the last chapter of our story. We had been together for nearly 3 years, and in that time, she became everything to me. My confidant, my partner, the woman I thought I would marry. But Serena was never easy to love. She was unpredictable, sometimes sweet and affectionate, other times cold and distant, her moods shifting like storms. We broke up after a fight so brutal, I still hear the echoes of it in my head. She accused me of betraying her, of secretly planning to leave, even though I had done nothing wrong. When I finally told her I couldn't handle the constant suspicion anymore, she snapped. Her face twisted with rage, and she screamed, "If you walk away, I'll make sure you never forget me." I walked away anyway. Weeks passed, and I heard nothing. No calls, no texts. It was strange, almost unsettling, given how intense she'd always been. I told myself she had finally moved on. That was until I received a package on my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. Inside was a leather-bound diary, Serena's diary. At first I thought it was a peace offering, some dramatic gesture to let me go. But when I opened it, I realized it wasn't a gift. It was a curse. The first pages were filled with memories of us, dates, trips, conversations. Her handwriting was delicate, almost romantic. But as I turned the pages, the words grew darker. He thinks he can leave me. He belongs to me. If I can't have him, no one will. The entries became more erratic, scrawled in heavy ink that bled into the paper. Then came sketches, disturbing, violent sketches of me. My face crossed out with jagged lines, my body drawn lifeless, surrounded by shadows. My stomach turned. I wanted to throw the diary away, but something compelled me to keep reading. Near the middle, I found something even worse. Lists, dates, times, places I had been in the weeks after we broke up. Notes about what I was wearing, who I spoke with. She had been watching me. That night I shoved the diary into a drawer and tried to forget it. But when I turned off the lights, I heard it, the faint sound of pages turning. I sat up in bed, heart racing. The diary was on my nightstand, open to a fresh page. In Serena's handwriting were the words, "I'm still here." I told myself I was imagining it, that I must have moved it without realizing. But deep down, I knew better. The days that followed blurred into terror. Each morning I found new entries written in the diary, words I hadn't written. They were addressed directly to me. "You can't escape. I see you. Soon." I tried burning it once. I tossed the diary into the fireplace, watching the flames consume its pages. For a moment I felt relief, until the fire went out suddenly, leaving the diary untouched, lying in the ashes without a single mark. That night I dreamt of Serena. She stood in the corner of my room, her face pale, her eyes black voids. She whispered, "Read me." When I woke, the diary was resting on my chest, open to a new page. "You can't destroy me." I stopped sleeping after that. One evening, desperate for answers, I went to her old apartment. Her landlord told me no one had seen Serena in weeks. He opened the door for me, and the smell hit me immediately. Rot, dampness, decay. The walls were covered in writing, her handwriting, the same phrases over and over. "He is mine, forever, never leave me." And in the center of the living room, lying on the floor, was another diary, identical to the one I had. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside were the same entries, the same sketches, the same obsession. Only this time the last page was dated the day after I left her. "Tonight I'll bind myself to him. If I can't live with him, I'll live inside him." I dropped the diary and ran. From that night on, the hauntings grew unbearable. My apartment walls creaked with whispers, Serena's voice slithering through the silence. The diary would appear wherever I went, on my desk, in my car, once even in my office drawer at work. Every time I opened it, fresh words appeared, written as though she were right there, watching. Closer. Always. Forever doesn't end. The worst was the night I saw her. I had fallen asleep on the couch, the diary clutched in my hands. I woke to the sound of scratching. Across the room in the dim light, I saw her crouched against the wall, her nails carving words into the plaster. "Mine." Her head snapped toward me, her eyes glowing faintly. She smiled, and in a voice both familiar and monstrous, she whispered, "Read me." I screamed, throwing the diary across the room, but when I looked again, she was gone. The wall, however, still bore the fresh word, "Mine." I tried moving again, to a new city, a new home, but the diary followed, always, waiting on the nightstand when I woke, whispering in the dark. It's been over a year now. I don't know where Serena is, or if she's even alive. Some nights I convince myself she's dead, that she bound herself to the diary like her final entry claimed. Other nights, I wonder if she's still out there somewhere, writing, watching, waiting. What I do know is this: I can't escape her. The diary won't let me. Her voice fills the walls of every place I go. Her presence lingers in every shadow. And every night, without fail, a new message appears in her handwriting. Tonight it says, "Soon We'll be together again. I'm terrified of what soon means. But deep down, I know the truth. Serena kept her promise. I will never forget her, because she will never let me. Story 6. The Wedding Dress. When I first met Evelyn, I thought she was the answer to every lonely night I had ever endured. She was elegant, graceful, and carried herself with a charm that drew everyone's attention. But it wasn't her beauty that trapped me. It was the way she made me feel like I was the only person in the world who mattered. We dated for just over a year before she started hinting at marriage. At first it was playful. Little comments about our future, about kids, about forever. I laughed along, not realizing how serious she was. Then one evening she showed me something that made my blood run cold. A wedding dress. It was hanging in her closet, perfectly preserved in plastic, as though waiting for the right moment. I bought it the week after our first date, she confessed, smiling sweetly. I knew you were the one. My heart stuttered. Who buys a wedding dress after just one date? But her eyes sparkled with so much hope, so much love, that I swallowed my fear and said nothing. The cracks in our relationship started small. Evelyn was possessive in ways that felt almost harmless, always wanting to know where I was, calling me every hour, showing up at my office with lunch even when I told her I was busy. It was flattering at first, but then it grew suffocating. The night I tried to break things off was the night everything changed. We were in her apartment, and I told her gently that I didn't think we were right for each other. Her smile froze, her eyes widened, glassy with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she walked to the closet, pulled out the wedding dress, and laid it across the couch. "You don't get it," she whispered. "We're already bound. I'm going to wear this dress when I walk toward you, whether it's at the altar or in your nightmares." I left that night, shaken to my core. But Evelyn didn't let me go. She started sending me pictures, photos of the dress, spread across her bed, photos of her holding a bouquet, photos of her standing in front of a mirror, wearing a veil that covered her pale face. Each image came with the same caption: "Soon." I blocked her number, deleted my social media, even moved to a new apartment across the city. For a while it worked. Weeks went by with no sign of her. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had given up. Then one night I woke to the sound of soft fabric dragging across the floor. My room was dark, but the moonlight through the window cast faint shapes. At the foot of my bed, I saw her. Evelyn, wearing the dress. The veil hid her face, but I could hear her voice, muffled and trembling. "You can't run from forever." I bolted upright, fumbling for the lamp. But when the light came on, she was gone. The room was empty. My hands shook as I searched every corner, but there was nothing. Only the faint scent of roses lingered in the air. The next morning, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a piece of lace, torn from the dress, and a note in her familiar handwriting. "I'll walk toward you soon." I nearly lost my mind. I called the police, told them everything, but without proof. They couldn't do much. They promised extra patrols, but it didn't stop her. Every night after that, the hauntings grew worse. I would hear her humming the wedding march through the walls. I would wake to find petals scattered across my floor. Once I discovered the dress hanging in my closet, though I had never brought it there. And then came the dreams. In them, I stood at the altar, dressed in a suit, waiting. The music played, and Evelyn walked down the aisle in her wedding dress. But her face was pale, her eyes sunken, her smile twisted. She carried not flowers, but a bouquet of dead roses. When she reached me, she whispered, "Forever?" And the veil slipped away, revealing a face I barely recognized, rotting, decayed, but smiling with triumph. I woke screaming every time, and every morning the dream left a mark behind, rose petals on the floor, a faint impression of footsteps leading to my bed, sometimes even lace resting on my pillow. One night, desperate, I called her old number, even though it was blocked. To my shock, she answered. Her voice was soft, almost tender. "Are you ready for the wedding?" I hung up, my heart pounding. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was close, watching, waiting. The breaking point came last month. I came home late from work, exhausted, and collapsed on the couch. When I opened my eyes, the room was filled with candles, hundreds of them flickering in the dark, and at the center of the room, standing perfectly still, was Evelyn, in the dress. The veil hid her face again, but I could see her lips moving beneath it, whispering words I couldn't understand. My body froze, paralyzed by fear. She lifted her hand slowly, pointing at me, and whispered one word that echoed in my skull. Forever. When I blinked, the room went dark again. The candles were gone, she was gone, but on the couch beside me lay the veil. I moved the next day. New city, new job, new everything. But it doesn't matter. The dress follows me. I've woken to find it draped across my bed, the veil covering my face. Sometimes I hear her humming the wedding march in the dead of night. And last week, I found something that made my blood run cold. In my closet, hanging neatly as though it belonged there, was the wedding dress, waiting. I don't know how this will end. Maybe she'll come for me in the flesh. Maybe she'll drag me into whatever place she lives now, between the living and the dead. But one thing I know for certain. Evelyn meant what she said. She will wear that dress, and when she does, it won't be at the altar. It will be when she comes to claim me. Story 7. The Mirror He Left Behind. When Daniel and I broke up, it wasn't mutual. He loved me in ways that felt suffocating, like he was trying to trap me in his world and shut every window to mine. At first, I mistook his intensity for passion, but over time it turned into something darker, something that made me feel like I was drowning in him. The day I ended things, he didn't yell, he didn't cry. He just stared at me with an expression I had never seen before, calm but hollow, like he was looking right through me. He said only one thing before walking out of my apartment. "If you won't see yourself with me, you'll see me in yourself." I tried to move on. Weeks passed, and I started to feel free again. That is, until I noticed the mirror. It wasn't mine. I had never seen it before. Tall, ornate, framed in dark wood carved with symbols I couldn't recognize. It stood in the corner of my bedroom as if it had always belonged there. I assumed Daniel left it behind. Some bizarre parting gift. I thought about throwing it out, but something stopped me. The mirror was strangely beautiful, and when I looked into it, my reflection seemed sharper, more alive. But soon the mirror started to change. One night I noticed my reflection didn't move exactly when I did. It lagged, just a second slower, like it was thinking for itself. Other times I would catch glimpses of Daniel behind me in the glass, standing in the shadows of the room. Every time I turned around, the room was empty, but in the mirror, he was there Then the whispers started. Late at night, as I drifted between sleep and wakefulness, I heard his voice, faint but unmistakable, echoing from the mirror. "You're still mine. Look closer. I'm waiting." At first I covered the mirror with a sheet, but every morning the sheet was gone, neatly folded at the foot of my bed, and the glass always seemed cleaner, polished, gleaming. One night, unable to resist, I leaned closer to the mirror. My reflection stared back, but the eyes weren't mine. They were Daniel's, dark, unblinking, filled with a hunger I knew too well. His lips curved into a smile, though mine did not move. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, but my reflection remained standing close to the glass, smiling at me. Then it whispered, "Come closer. Let me in." I screamed and ran from the room, but when I returned hours later, my reflection was normal again. For a while I tried to avoid the mirror, but it became impossible. I would catch glimpses of it in my peripheral vision, and every time the reflection seemed slightly wrong. Sometimes my face was bruised or scratched, even though my skin was unmarked. Other times I saw Daniel's hand resting on my shoulder, his eyes peering from over my reflection's shoulder. The worst was when my reflection began moving when I didn't. I would stand still, but in the glass, I'd see myself tilting my head, smiling or reaching out. Once, it pressed its palm against the glass, and I swear I felt the coldness seep into my chest. I tried to get rid of it. I called movers to haul it away, but when they came, they claimed they couldn't find it. They looked confused, staring at the empty corner of my bedroom while I stood there, screaming that the mirror was right in front of us. To them, it wasn't there. To me, it never left. That night I dreamed of Daniel. He stood behind the glass, his hands pressed against it, his lips moving silently. I leaned closer, desperate to hear him, and suddenly the glass cracked. His arm shot out, cold and clammy, grabbing my wrist. I woke up screaming, sweat pouring down my face, only to find a bruise on my wrist, exactly where he had grabbed me. After that, the hauntings became relentless. Every time I looked into the mirror, Daniel's face grew clearer, stronger, while mine faded. The more I resisted, the more violent it became. Objects fell from shelves, lights flickered, the temperature in my apartment plummeted. I covered every mirror in the house, but it didn't matter. His mirror was always uncovered, always waiting. The final straw came last week. I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of glass shattering. I rushed to the bedroom, and there it was, the mirror, cracked from top to bottom. In the fractured glass, I saw dozens of reflections of myself, but none of them matched my movements. They smiled when I cried, reached when I recoiled, and in every single reflection, Daniel stood behind me, his arms wrapped tightly around my waist. In the largest shard of glass, he leaned forward and whispered, "You'll never leave me, because now you are me." The mirror repaired itself the next day, perfect, whole, as if it had never broken, but something changed. When I look in the mirror now, I don't always recognize the face staring back. Sometimes it smiles when I don't. Sometimes the eyes are darker, sharper, more like his. And sometimes, late at night, I see Daniel staring at me from the other side, his lips pressed against the glass, as if he's kissing it. I don't know how long I have before he steps through. Or worse, before I step in. All I know is that I can't escape him, because the mirror doesn't just reflect me anymore. It reflects us. forever.